Okay, so Colt Technology Services, your fairly recent digital infrastructure report, it's got quite a lot of fascinating sustainability related findings, and um, they perhaps don't reflect well on UK organisations. And maybe as a sort of supplementary, you could therefore perhaps put that in context, compare, contrast the sort of different countries' attitudes that you came across in the report.
Yeah, I think Phil, to start with, yeah, some of the findings that we had on the UK side were, like you said, a little bit lower than we would expect. I think one, for instance, we saw that in a multi-year plan, we saw that it was 18% for the UK, that 18% of the CIOs that we had in the survey had responded that they have a multi-year plan towards sustainability. I think a lot of that, though, if I look at UK first, and then I'll kind of give you the comparisons of the countries. I look at the political and economic instability that's kind of been taking place. I think that kind of you've had a lot of change in government. You've had some priority shifts. You've had policy shifts with the new government coming into play. Cost of living has been kind of an impact. So people are kind of looking at that saying, it's a little hard for us to think long-term sustainability efforts right now with everything that's going on as the policies are shifting and the politics are shifting, makes it a little bit hard. Energy and infrastructure challenges, still a heavy dependence upon fossil fuels. But there's been some slow rollout of grid upgrades. And so I think some of that's hindered it a little bit. You have just businesses that have been a little bit, standoffish to the idea. It's about, profitability, and they see that that's an initial investment that they have to make up front. And then they'll have, kind of their investment, but they're kind of to vest on that right now. Hey, let me just focus it on profitability and regulatory gaps. I see some of that that's taken place where, once again, back to policies and funding and collaboration, that still hasn't quite come together yet, even after the Brex exit. So part of that's in play too. So I think it's coming, it's happening, but getting the policies and I think getting the movement and then getting the public buy-in to support it, understanding the urgency, I think is going to be important behind it. So there's an education that has to take place too. So I think that's a big piece of what we're seeing and why we're seeing some of the results we're seeing in the UK. But to give you, I think, maybe a side of that from a UK perspective, I also see there's some strong offshore wind energy. You've got a growing electric vehicle adoption that's taking place. So there are some things that are starting to occur that's giving it some trend sets. If I compare, though, to other countries, just to kind of give a comparison, Germany, for instance, industrial leader. It's top in solar and wind energy. It's got strong regulations for business, but it's still heavily reliant on coal. So it's kind of, it's still got some work to do in its area. France, 70% of its electricity comes from nuclear. So very, very, low carbon kind of footprint. They have really strong public transport and high-speed rails that's helping them out a lot. But they're a little slow in moving their industry, their heavy part of their industry into that. So they've got work to do there. Netherlands, another one that has really been a pioneer in some fronts. They've been a world leader in recycling and waste management. They've done a nice job in their urban planning and kind of putting forward green transport. They still have a reliance on natural gas, so they've got some work to do there. And they have some climate change issues going on with flooding and things of that nature. So that kind of factors in. Italy, they do a good job with solar and hydro. They have sustainable agriculture kind of efforts going on right now, but they struggle with things like waste management and recycling and things of that nature. They're still heavily dependent upon cars. Their transport's still kind of in a weaker state than other countries, so they got work to do on that front. Switzerland, another one that's really dominating in this area, done really well with hydropower. They do a great job with recycling and waste reduction. They've kind of made eco-friendly transport, if you will. But they also have high power consumption per capita, so they've got some things they need to work on around efficiency. Japan, another area that we focus in on is, they've done a great job in like smart cities and technology around that. They've invested in hydrogen energy, but they still have a heavy dependence on coal as well and gas. So, and they're having a hard time moving away from things like plastics and stuff like that. So they're still working on their efforts. So in my opinion, every country has a shining spot they're working on, and they have a balance area that they still need to make improvements. But you can see in each one of these, they have different strengths upon which they're leading, and we can learn from that.
Okay, and in terms of digital infrastructure, specifically, which the report was looking at, there's some, I mean, as I say, there's some great findings, and one which I find interesting is that more and more, or at least many organizations, the CIO now has a major role to play when it comes to sustainability. So is that, I guess that's presumably just an acknowledgement that the IT and the power, more importantly, that is required for it is a big part of a company's carbon footprint. But please tell us a bit more.
Yeah, no, Phil, you're right. I think you described it well. The digital infrastructure play is absolutely paramount, and it's in the forefront of everybody's mind right now. And it's a big part of sustainability and governance and things of that nature. And so, in this survey that we put out to 1,500 CIOs across 10 countries, it came back that 71% of those surveyed, they have basically the ability to make that decision, or they've been empowered to make that decision, and they own it. As far as and most of them own it in its complete entirety of how we're going to move forward as an organization around sustainability and governance. So yeah, the empowerment of the CIOs with their ability to control the digital infrastructure is now the decision makers on what we're doing from a sustainability perspective.
And I guess linked to that as well, the report um, points out that more and more organizations are being driven. Well, so the environmental impact and governance, to add in there, are the driving forces when it comes to, I think it's all digital infrastructure decision making, which is perhaps somewhat surprising. But again, tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, we got back in the results that 38% of them said that environmental impacts and governance drive their strategic decisions. A little bit higher in some countries. I think in Belgium we had up to 60%, but on average, 38% of them said that this is a deciding factor for them. And 22% of them said that they would seek guidance from network providers like ourselves on, reuse and recycling and things of that nature. So they're looking for more information. And 62% of them said they would call out network providers saying, hey, what's your plans? What are you working on? How do you focus in on this? What was really surprising, I think, was that 16% of them say, if you don't have a plan, I'm not sure we can do business with you. So, they're taking a hard stance even. So it's becoming more and more evident in their RFPs and their inquiries, but then it's also becoming a must-have in some of those decision-making processes.
And it's probably all but impossible to have a conversation about IT these days without mentioning the two letters AI. But intriguingly, again, in this report, because I know AI is a bit of a sort of double edge, but I think the report findings for yourselves seems to be that for many organizations, they see AI as a force for good when it comes to environmental strategies and governance, which I say might be seen as surprising, bearing in mind we all know AI is quite power hungry, but organizations are presumably thinking that the pluses outweigh any of that negative. Is that right?
Yeah, no, you're right, Phil. And matter of fact, I don't think you can pull up any news article or any TV station without having a conversation around AI and what's going on and what's taking place. It's definitely relevant in every conversation we're having right now. And from our results that we got back in, it said that 42% of those that responded basically said that AI is a positive contribution. It's a factor. It's meaningful. It's helping them achieve their goals around sustainability and governance. And then basically go a little bit step further. 1 out of 5 basically said that AI is facilitating part of their strategy around this. And I think you take you said it right. You take the right approach. There's pros and cons to all of this, right? I think we're seeing it. The positive side of AI is it's given us the energy efficiencies with our process and our manufacturing. It's helping with waste in buildings. It's helping with transport. It's helping across all industries. You see it in resource management. We're optimizing. I talked about, Italy and their agriculture they're using AI to help them with their agriculture efficiencies and water use. And once again, a lot of manufacturing are using it to help them with their production cycles and limiting waste. Climate research they're using AI to improve how they can proactively respond and be ready for climate changes that might take place. Waste management, another big area that we're seeing a ton of AI enhancements being, leveraged and used to create benefits there. The balance of that, to your point, is, Goldman Sachs put out an article not too long ago that said data center power consumption is up 160%. So yeah, we're leveraging the power of AI, but at the same time, for these large language models to work, it's taking a lot of power to generate it. I do think we're on the early adoption of the curve of AI, meaning the efficiencies is still being developed and worked out and how to process. We just recently heard, DeepSeek came out and said, "Hey, just found a new way of, creating large language models with fewer GPUs or fewer, a little less hardware." So there's going to be more. We'll see how real and how impactful those kinds of things. But I think we're on the early adopter. I think you'll see more and more efficiencies on how to leverage AI. But the fact is, AI is absolutely speeding up our capabilities when it comes to things like production and when it comes to things like sustainability and governance. And so very much an added benefit. If I look, inside of Colt, that's something that we're starting to leverage a little bit more heavy across the board. So it's an important factor for us as well.
Okay, and in terms of slightly changing tack, in terms of other findings, I think you revealed that IT leaders who we've established are important now, have a major role to play, but they are sometimes struggle to demonstrate environmental governance ROI. So it's all good and well to say we've got to do this or we've got to do that, but in terms of the actual sums, I suppose, and showing how it's going to
Yeah.
benefit the business when it comes to technology investments, they maybe struggle to articulate that. Is there a particular reason for that, or?
There's in our results that we got back, 21% of the leaders definitely are struggling with kind of validating their ROI or their return on their investment. And a lot of it, stems from things we're seeing, at least in the conversations, is, they're in the early stages of maturity with their development around this area. So they're still working out all the particulars, if you will. So there is some inefficiencies with how they're approaching it. In some of the cases, they don't have complete buy-in from their leadership or their board necessarily. So they're still struggling to make proof points. A lot of them are using, simplistic tools to measure it, so it's not as impactful as it could be or as insightful as it should be. So they're not necessarily getting the full picture of the progress they've made, and they're not understanding the obstacles that they need to overcome in its entirety. One of the things at Colt we've really been kind of pushing on is we have challenges like that as well, but we've kind of been in a really good cadence of assessing our processes and our measurements and making sure that we're using science-based approaches to our monitoring capabilities of the progress around the environmental impacts. And that cadence of constantly kind of going back and maturing the process and maturing the tools is causing our results to be more and more impactful, and we're becoming even more efficient at how we look at things. So I think it's a maturity thing. I think over time, more and more will get more robust in their approach, and I think they'll gain the returns that they're looking for. We're starting to see it.
And I guess relate when you talk about the sort of it's a maturity thing that may well apply here as well. That legacy technology. So a lot of companies still have a lot of oldish kit, shall we say, whether it's an actual data center or the IT inside it. And a lot of the respondents to your survey say that it's a significant barrier for both environmental and government's progress. And I think even suggesting that retiring legacy equipment is seen as, if not the quickest, certainly the most important contribution when it comes to, I guess, improving an organization's environmental performance. So I guess it's very easy to say we're going to replace the kit, but there's financial pressures, etc. So I
Right.
suppose what's going on and why aren't people getting rid of legacy kit, which presumably is holding them back, not just environmentally, but I say performance-wise, etc. What thoughts?
Yeah, it's a key conversation point. I think there is an understanding that that is an opportunity for these companies to pull, not only, a cost out, but it gives them a chance to definitely improve their efficiency as an organization, align better with the sustainability efforts they're looking for. Everybody's talking about it. It becomes a priority conversation of how do you balance it out with the growth sector that they have, and that was part of the dialogue that we got back from them. But I look even internally here at Colt, and we've recently The last 3 years, we've been awarded a platinum rating with EcoVadis in our sustainability. And, that puts us in a ranking position. We're in the 99th percentile, scoring each year higher and higher. I think we started out it scores at 100, a basis of 100. And I think we scored 73 the first year, 79 the next, 81 this past year. And so we continue to find ways of improving on that. And once again, the measurements are really our actions and commitment around environment, labor and human rights, ethics, sustainable procurement, things like that. That's how they gauge it. And we're hitting this top percentile over and over. One of the big factors for us in achieving that kind of view was we had a 4-year project upon which we were removing a lot of the old TDM switches, the old voice network, if you will, the old Sonnet infrastructure. We were SDH infrastructure. We were removing that out of our network, and it was like 130,000 circuits, hundreds of locations, thousands of racks worth of equipment. And this really made a huge impact when it came to the efficiencies of how we operated as a business, but also came in helping us score highly in the public rankings like EcoVadis. So for us, we've seen it in the realities of what it can produce. I think it has to become a priority for the companies. They have to put a focus in on it. They have to sometimes even create dedicated resources like we did to achieve it. But this really helped us improve our stance. I look back, Philip, at our stance in 2019. We really wanted to make a move towards removing and decreasing our carbon emissions. And since 2019, we're at 34% decrease of our carbon footprint. A lot of that has to do with, again, life cycle management, having the right hygiene in our network, making sure we're cycling things out appropriately. And so it's a big part. 78% of our sites are renewable energy based now. So sustainability, we have this terminology here called sustainability by design. So I think you have to be intentional, and that's what we're seeing with those that we've been interviewing. You have to be intentional in order for it to be meaningful, in order to achieve the results you're looking for.
Yeah, and obviously, legacy there, an important issue to address. But I think the report also uncovers some measures which organisations believe or actually have made a significant contribution when it comes to sustainability and governance. I mean, you probably know the list better. I think things like zero trust, network as a service, smart technology. Just give us a flavour, I guess, of the types of technologies or solutions that folks think are giving them some advantage in these areas.
Yeah, I'll throw some stats at you on what we got back from the report. Really interesting on some of these fronts. Agree with a lot of them too. 61% of the results that came back said, or 61% of the respondents said that AI is helping them with their security measures. It's helping them look at technology that can identify abnormalities. I know here at Colt, that's what we're doing. We're plugging in some things that help us identify abnormalities, and that gives us an opportunity to take action or ultimately automate some action. 58% of the respondents said that they're kind of focused in on data at the network edge. AI is helping them with some of that, matter of fact. Here at Colt, we've actually taken that a little bit further and said, hey, the edge insights that we're able to produce, we can actually do green pathing. So I can now route your circuit in the most carbon efficient footprint possible. So I told you earlier, the energy in France is nuclear, so pretty low carbon footprint, versus the energy plants in Germany are a little bit more coal-based. So, maybe I route your circuit through France if I have that optionality, and that gives you a greener footprint from that. I also think one of the comments we had back was a zero touch enablement. So basically being able to put something on the edge and allowing it to self-provision. You just plug and play, it turns itself up. You're reducing truck rolls, which is also another way of, kind of improving your sustainability position. 57% said they're leaning or leveraging more of the network as a service capability. So just like us, we're investing in automation that enables easy, agile kind of approaches for our customer journey. They're doing the same thing. They're eliminating rework and cycles, if you will. 19% of them came back and said they're looking for support around consumption-based services. Once again, Colt, that's something we're involved in. That's part of our network as a service offering. We have a product called On Demand. that allows us to, throttle the bandwidth requirements that a customer needs. Less impactful in the overall scheme of things. 20% said they're looking for peak times and off-peak times. So they're pushing their workloads to off-peak times to help with some of the efficiencies. 30% said that they're using AI to control the environmentals in the office space. So like heat and air conditioning, things of that nature. So smart building technologies, if you will. We're seeing that, like I said, in Japan, pretty heavy right now. So lots of different measurements that we're seeing come out of them and kind of their viewpoints of how they're approaching it. But yes, I think across the board, whether it's AI, network as a service, all the key words we're hearing right now, you're seeing these CIOs take hold of that technology innovation, and they're leveraging it to help them with some of these sustainable goals that they have.
Yeah, and I think there was one more, if I remember, I think the report says there's been a marked increase in the adoption of end-to-end intelligent infrastructure. I mean, that
Yeah.
maybe is part of that AI piece you said, but I don't know if you want to say a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. No, I think that it is a little bit of AI. I think there's a growing trend in adopting this end-to-end intelligent infrastructure that's powered by AI, Internet of Things, the cloud computing capabilities. You're seeing it once again in the smart cities. They're using sensors to improve resource management. You're seeing it in industrial automation. AI is optimizing manufacturing, reducing costs, increasing the productivity through this predictive maintenance and smart supply chain applications, energy efficiency across the board. In telecom, you're seeing it specifically in our networks and our capabilities of NaaS, the network as a service capabilities, the 5G networks, the low Earth orbit networks. You're seeing it across the board in all of these infrastructures and networks that are taking place. You're seeing more of a complete end-to-end design, looking at everything from the space, the power consumption, the hardware that's being used, the process of life cycle management, how you upgrade your systems, all of that's being taken into consideration. And you have, tech investments taking place. Companies like AMD's investing in AI infrastructure to stay competitive in the growing market and space. So there's a lot that's taking place. I know here at Colt, we've been focused in on driving adoption and innovation, if you will. So for instance, recently we just did the world's first terabit across subsea, across the Atlantic. That subsea was important because one, it showed we have an ability to reduce our space, our footprint by over 30%, and we were able to reduce our power consumption by almost 80%. So that's one circuit that we're showing efficiencies being gained. And so we're finding more and more applications. We turned up another test trial. We turned up an 800 gig circuit from Chicago to London, proving distance and efficiencies with distance, reducing the need for regeneration of circuits, which enables, once again, lower power consumption, less space consumption. We showed an API collaborative effort with our partner Proximus, showing, we have some ability to make efficiencies across companies and how we work together. We have that expanded. We did an announcement of an expanded solution set with Ravidia, who's a low Earth orbit provider. Once again, new enhancements and capabilities driving diversity and meeting the needs of the customers and new ways with new technology that is the most efficient opportunity. So we're pushing the envelope of innovation, trying to drive more. And all of this, in my opinion, links back to how I create that end-to-end solution. It might be across the terrestrial, it might be across sea, it might be across the space endeavors. We're seeing it across the board, but all are important in helping the customers reach their end-to-end solution. So definitely there's a big drive across the industry on this front.
And I won't say the trickiest, but the perhaps the most complicated question to last for you, in terms of how you'd summarize organizations' commitment, from what the report suggests in terms of sustainability in government, and I guess the part two is the crunch thing. There's clearly, for various reasons, a growing, shall we say, pushback or at least alternative view, whether it's to sustainability or even governance. Certain organizations are, if you like, suggesting that they don't need as much governance is kind of restricting their ability to, introduce new technologies, etc. So just your thoughts, I suppose, as to how do you think most organizations are firmly committed to that governance sustainability roadmap, or would you worry at all that with certain amount pushback out there that it's not so certain that we'll carry on making this progress? People will say, well, hang about, we need lighter governance, less demanding sustainability targets if we want to grow our businesses. Or just your thoughts, I suppose.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think I'll start with there was a quote by Elon Musk in 23 when he was at a power conference. And he said, there's not enough urgency in the power sector, and people don't understand the demand for electricity. Uh, I think that was an important statement at the time because it's really about awareness. I think if people understand the bigger picture, you step out of your focus, your current role at your particular employer, and you step back a second and you look at the bigger picture of what's going on, what's taking place. You start to have a better understanding of the urgency that we do have some issues associated with our climate. We do have some issues associated with power consumption. We have a massive amount of capability that we're trying to push for, but we're going to have to make sure we have the proper resources to do it. So that awareness, I think, is super key for people to, one, if you understand that and you understand the urgency, you want to play a part. There is something that each of us can do in playing a part and making sure that awareness is understood and our part is being played to make an impact in the overall scheme of things. So I do think that it continues forward. I do think you have, this balance of, companies need to be profitable. They need to make themselves responsible to their shareholders. I mean, that's the number one thing for every company for sure is you're responsible to your shareholders first. But at the same time, I think being responsible to your shareholders is also being smart. And once again, go back to that statement we use, sustainability by design is a way of being smart in achieving what your shareholders have asked you to do. So I think being aware of the situation, being smart, and being intentional about how you design around these things are important for our leaders to take hold of. So it will stick. I think there are your ups and downs. I think there is some balance that will take place over time, and you will see an early adopter curve. You will see more kind of taking hold early, and then as momentum gains and the opportunities are shown that, hey, by investing in this area up front, you actually get greater benefits on the backside. And as more and more people make it a requirement, I think it's going to drive more and more adoption. For us, we've got these values internally where, we state, hey, we know people matter. We're always going to find a better way. We win together. We can change the world. We can make a difference. That's kind of the value prop we have internally. Hey, let's do something with this. And if I look at our position in our world, in our industry we work in, we're the largest, B2B pure play player in Europe now. From a revenue perspective, we co-manage the largest peering network in the world. We've invested globally in our infrastructure. We build strong relationships with our partners in the industry, and we're making sure that our customers are future-proofed, ready for what's to come, and making sure they have the capacity and the network needs and the connectivity to complete, their goals, if you will. We're focused in on things like simplification and automation. I gave you some innovative ideas that we're kind of doing. We're taking the steps to make life easier, to give them the easy button to accomplish their goals. But inside of all of that, we still have a deep commitment, around sustainability, making sure that it's the foundation of everything we do. We get the platinum ratings and we get the recognition, and that's great. But it comes down to, once again, we see it as it's part of our DNA, it's part of our structure, it's who we are, it's sustainability by design, it's a starting point for everything we do. It's our North Star. So I think as more companies drive it as part of their DNA, as part of their culture, as part of their values, I think they'll start to recognize and see the rewards of it. And once again, part of this and adopting this as part of our culture and making this part of our DNA has really driven greater efficiencies and greater opportunities for us as a company, and we're providing greater results to our shareholders. So we're accomplishing the original task at hand, which is, do what provide and meet the goals that your shareholders are giving you. but we're just being smart about it and making a bigger impact that's beyond just, our shareholder impact. We're making an impact to the world.
Well, buddy, it's been brilliant to chat to you and some great insights into what's going on with obviously the report and also at Colt itself. So really appreciate the time you've given me. Thanks very much.
Uh,
Thank you.
Philip, thank you. It's an honor to get a chance to speak to you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks again.